G'day guys, PeetyG Top5 checking in here once again for PGTV. Another episode of Top 5 and 5, but this week it's brought to you by PeetyG Cloud servers. If you don't have a CSGO server and you want to get one, use the cloud-based servers provided by PeetyG. They're simply the best, the easiest to use, and the most affordable. So there'll be a link in the description below for you guys to check that out. But, you know, support the company with servers that supported OCE CSGO for as long as I can remember. And I'm a dinosaur. Now, this week's Top 5 and 5, Australian Awpers. This week, though, I've added a new little section called Close But No Cigars, and these two players today are Inject and Sterling from Avant and Darksided, respectively. They didn't make the Top 5 and 5, but they're heavily on the radar. So, without further ado, let's get stuck in. Number 5, Dizzy from Legacy. Now, let's be real, Dizzy's got some skills, and he's played with players like JKS and Azza in the past when he subbed for Vox Eminor back in the day, but Dizzy's, I guess, lack of consistency has always hurt him as well. At the moment, he's trapped on a not a particularly good team. So he's going to struggle to really produce from that spot, but I think the natural talent speaks for itself with Dizzy at number 5. Number 4, Sicko from Kings. Really great, versatile utility AWPer, but he does have limitations in terms of hitting insane shots often. I think that he's worked on his consistency. He's in a great situation, but we're talking about just nutty, crazy AWP talent. I think Sicko's value to that team lies more in his consistency and his methodology and his approach to his AWPing rather than his ability to just hit nutty shots, but he does have nutty pistols. But we're talking AWPs. Number 3. It's going to draw some heat, I think, but he's dropped down the charts. Ali from Chiefs has landed himself at number 3 in my list of AWPers. Reason being, Chiefs ain't winning. If the Chiefs ain't winning, the AWP ain't producing, then you can't be considered the number 1 AWPer in Australia when your team is regularly getting beaten up. And I haven't really seen anything from Ali in the past few months that makes me sort of fear the kind of form he was in a few months ago. But the same can be said for everyone in that Chiefs roster. I think they're going through a little bit of a rebuilding phase. And after they got heavily counter-stratted because of their success, they're going through a patch where they're putting some new stuff together. However, Ali's performance has dropped off notably. So he's found himself at the number 3 position. Now, number 2. This guy's worked insanely hard on his game, and no one has been more of a critic of this player than I. It is Gratisfaction from the Greyhound Gaming Club, and look, he's really put some people on notice with his performances, not only online now, but also at LAN. He's been incredibly consistent, and the reason I have him at number 2 isn't necessarily because he's that much better than like Sicko, Dizzy, or Ali or whatever. It's because the role that he plays for Greyhounds puts so much more emphasis on him being productive and needing him to produce in that position. So they do put a lot of pressure on him to hit shots and play big, and for the most part, the reason I have him at number 2 is that he's played up to that standard. He's been able to find himself in good, favourable situations. You know, he's really cleaned up his repeat game, and he's taking favourable duels with the help and guidance of players like Dexter and Urcast, getting him back into line. But a huge shout out has to go to Gratisfaction and the amount of work he has put in. But that leaves me, ladies and gentlemen, at the number 1 AWPer in Australia. There will be no surprises here that I've chosen this player to be number 1, but you know, it's hard to argue against. Tainted Minds' brand new signing, Yaman, fresh off his Renegades contract. He has slotted back into that AWP position, left vacant by Infrequent, who has been omitted off this list, but does get an honorable mention for obvious reasons. But that's not to take away the skill of Infrequent. However, Yaman is an absolute beast. Now, what people may not understand about Yaman in particular isn't that he's the most nutty AWPer because he was being scaled against international competition. So when you're coming up against Guardian and Kenny S and Skadoodle and all these sorts of players regularly, even JDM when he was in his hot patch, these are the caliber of players that Yaman had to fare against. And if he doesn't hold up to that caliber, okay, I can hear that argument. I can hear why you don't believe he's a top-tier international AWPer. But coming back to Australia with his advantage in knowledge of positioning, knowledge of strategy, knowledge of timing, and also just generally ability to read the game and get in good positions with the weapon because of his international experience and ability to shot make, I think he's still number 1. Until proven otherwise, on LAN especially, because that's where it matters the most, as I've repeatedly said, I'd like to see someone out AWP Yaman on LAN. I think there are people in the list that can do it, and I've mentioned them, but I have to see it for the king of the AWP to be taken off his throne. So, ladies and gentlemen, that has been PeetyG's Top 5 and 5 for this week. Sorry about the belated release. That's my timer. I'm out of time. Tune in next week once again for another episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope you enjoyed the smooth funk in the background. Until next time, peace out.